A lot of people today have issues with Yasuo being basically tied to Noxus because of how few stun effects Ionia has. And Ionia actually has multiple stun effects. This is basically like Yasuo, but even worse. Hey everyone, how's it going today? theskilledroy here, and I'm here with another amazing custom cards video. Basically, I took a bunch of cards from the subreddit as well as the Discord and put them into a video where I'm going to try my best to rate them and see how they do. Of course, if you guys want your card rated, please send it into my email or directly to me on my Discord. Both of those will be included in the description below. But otherwise though, let's get to it. Alright, the first card we have here is the 10 mana 12/12, the Steel Maiden. She has tough, and when you play her, you single combat all enemies. What a super splashy effect. I absolutely love this effect. But thinking about it, it's actually quite weak, right? Like, one thing that's really important for a lot of late game cards, such as 8, 9, 10 mana, is that they have to be very impactful, and they have to threaten a game typically on their own, or basically completely change a board state. Now, this obviously does completely change the board state. You could hypothetically destroy almost every card in the game really easily. I think like only Nautilus comes to mind as a card that really stands up to this. So inherently it works, but the thing is, it's also very interactable. Inherently, combat effects in Legends of Runeterra have a lot of angles you can fight them on. You have frostbites, you have recalls, you have hard removal spells, and each of those is extremely detrimental to the Steel Maiden. Like, if she gets Will of Ionia, you spent 10 mana on nothing. If she gets Vengeance, you get spent 10 mana on nothing. If you cast a frostbite, it's basically 10 mana do nothing. And with those things in consideration, I am relatively okay with this from a balance standpoint. I think, if anything, it's actually relatively weak. I don't really see what deck you would realistically looking to play this in. You would basically almost inherently have to be trying to cheat her out, and you would have to use her as a punishing tool when the opponent overextends. But considering that the easiest way to answer her can even be as low as 3, 5 mana, it's like they have to overextend a ton and realize that you're not doing anything with 10 mana up. So I feel like that's a relatively fair ask. Actually, overall though, the card works really well functionally, and I really like a lot of the angles it's sort of approaching on. I think if you are going to make a 10 mana card, this is the sort of splashy, crazy effect you kind of have, because otherwise, an answer to this card, or any answer, if it's too slow than this, like, you literally can't actually do anything with the card anymore, right? Because it's going to come down too late and no one will care about it. 10 mana is like Aurelion Soul leveled up Karma turn, so it needs to be something crazy, and I feel like that is achieving it here. It's just the fact that single combat inherently will allow a lot of counterplay, and then if they have any answer for you, you kind of just explode. Overall though, I really like the effect, and I feel like it's almost balanced enough that you could tune this down, give it worse stats of course, and then put it lower on the mana curve. I'm not sure where exactly I'd place it myself, but I think it's something that could really be really cool if they were to make it a bit more mid-rangey in a sort of 7-8 range as opposed to the 10 mana range. Overall though, I like the card a lot, and I think it's really cool. I just think the balance needs some work, and it needs to see a little bit more design honing, but otherwise, really solid stuff. I'm going to give this one a solid B. Great work with this one. Alright, next up we have Fun Glow, the 4 mana 3/3 with Attune in Bilgewater. When you cast a spell, grant Attune to your cheapest ally in your hand, and when you summon another Attune ally, draw 1. Okay, this is obviously a card that a lot of people were really looking for. See, when Attune first got announced, a lot of people really wanted there to be a quote-unquote Attune deck, like some sort of payoff for playing a lot of Attune, instead of the more utility focus that it ended up having. So it's completely understandable. Basically, this was the idea to sort of create, hey, let's make an Attune card that can now help the other Attune cards become even better. Now, here's my issue with it, is that this is something I like to sort of refer to as self-sufficiency. When you're designing a card in a card game, you have to realize you're designing one card out of your full deck. So when people tend to make cards and combos like these, they end up constantly putting on the payoff for a card with the engine of the card, and they put them into one card. So for example, not only does he make more Attune creatures, but on top of that, he pays you off for playing them. This is a completely self-sufficient package of, hey, now basically all your cards are going to draw you 1, and basically they all give you more spell mana. Now inherently, that's not completely bad to have like one half of these effects or the other, but since we're designing a card game, it does feel a little counterintuitive to sort of have one card be everything in one package. It sort of takes up a lot of the power budget, and it really makes the design really stuffed, because it has like 2 effects on here, as well as having a tune itself. If you get multiples of this thing out, it's absolutely bonkers. Like, there's so many other issues with this in terms of balance, but I don't even want to address those, because the main issue here is that from a design standpoint, it is both a payoff and an engine card. Think about it like this. There's multiple stun payoff cards, such as Faye Blade Twirler or the Legion General, who get bonuses from stuns, but they themselves don't stun things. That's because you're being encouraged to push the deck and make it have more interesting angles. When you have a card like this, almost ironically enough, just because it's first effect, it's almost like you don't want to put it with the Toon creatures, which I feel like is counterintuitive to what this card design really wants to go for. Overall, it's a really nice design, and I'm glad it exists, but I really feel like cutting off either the front half or the bottom half of this effect makes it a lot more healthy for the design, and inherently makes it more balanced as well, because I think right now it's a little too strong. So yeah, I think right now you just need to sort of work on making like a bunch of attuned creatures, and then maybe have both half of this effect on 2 different creatures, and then you're sort of building a new archetype rather than having one just big card that just slots in everywhere that you want the attune to be. So that's personally where I'd put this. It takes up a little bit too much of the power budget with its current effect, so unfortunately I'm going to have to give this one a C, because it's simply not balanced, and I think it sort of defeats the purpose of card game design. Alright, and next for the next card here we have Power Fist. This is going to be a Blitzcrank signature spell, and it is a 2 mana to play, discard 1, and stun an enemy at fast speed. Now right off the bat, I want to say that the stun effects are typically balanced around 3 mana to stun anything, is typically what we're averaging out these cards to be nowadays. If you look at cards like Palm, or you're looking at cards like Steel Tempest, a lot of stun effects are typically balanced around, okay, it can be cheaper than 3 if it has a condition, and it can be more expensive than 3 if it has a benefit. So in this case, this makes sense. Power Fist is discard 1, which is a downside. Obviously, some decks can circumvent that, but it is inherently a downside, and then stun an enemy. I think from a balance standpoint, this is quite decent. However, this is a P and Z card, which is a little weird because there is literally no stun effects in P and Z. Now, we're going to see, of course, that Blitzcrank is going to be something that helps push this a bit further, but the thing is that you can't just start mix and matching specific region effects with each other. I think all of us want to see more stuns and more regions, but this just really doesn't make sense as one. Not to mention, it's sort of counterintuitive to what PZ really wants in the long run anyways. But let's tackle this from a conceptual level. I think, weirdly enough, this is probably one of the most Noxian cards I've ever seen designed. It's a stun mechanic, it's a discard mechanic, it's cheap, it's aggressive, it's so good. Like, there's so many angles for this card specifically, but not as a PZ card. This is almost a perfect Noxian card. So I think from a balance standpoint and a design standpoint, I'm actually quite impressed with it. I think it's really good. It's just, it being in PZ represents a misunderstanding of the game's mechanics, as well as there's no precedent for this sort of effect in PZ. If we were to do this, then you can start moving Frostbites into Demacia, you can start running like Obliterates in Ionia, like it never really ends at that point. So I feel like this is better as a Noxian card, and as a PZ card, it kind of just almost outright fails. I'm going to give it a C because it's a pretty good card in all honesty, but it just needs a region change, and that's the big thing here. So a solid C for me. Alright, and up next we have Blitzcrank, the 2 mana 0/4 with Challenger. Attack, stun the enemy I challenge, and his level up condition is you stun 4 enemies. His second half is 2 mana 0/6, attack, the strongest ally strikes the enemy I challenge, and stun it. So, right at the bat, I really like a lot with this design. There's so many things that are so unique about it and so interesting. I do really like a lot of it. But right off the bat, you stun 4+ enemies is really awkward when PZ has literally no stun effects. I understand you just made Power Fist, and that's going to be one card you would hypothetically include with Blitzcrank, but the thing is that the region itself has very, very few stun effects. A lot of people today have issues with Yasuo being basically tied to Noxus because of how few stun effects Ionia has, and Ionia actually has multiple stun effects. This is basically like Yasuo, but even worse for how much he's going to be tied to another region. So because of that right off the bat, I think that's a huge mistake for him. And I think that's unfortunately a big issue. And people are saying, of course, that you can level him up with his own effect, but that is like turn 2, 4, 6, 8. On the 8th turn, you get a level up. It's just not really sustainable. So overall, not great standings not great standings for this right off the bat. Now, as we look at the card, though, I actually do like it conceptually. Like, this is very much the closest comparison to this is probably something like Braum as a sort of defensive, aggressive utility challenger unit where you drag a powerful unit out of the way so that your smaller units can get in for damage. And that works perfectly for an aggressive PZ deck. And if we actually look at his Power Fist design, which had a discard element to it, it makes a lot of sense that the card sort of functions there, and I really appreciate that. The issue is that stun is not where you want to go for this sort of effect. I think a low to the ground challenger unit in PZ is totally legitimate. We already have Vi as a reason for champions in PZ getting challenger, but I feel like this is just something that could go a little bit differently. Another really big issue with this card is the wording. I hate to be a rules lawyer or a stickler on this sort of thing, but it does matter, especially when there's so much precedent to go off of. On the level up card here, it says attack, the strongest ally strikes the enemy I challenge and stun it. It almost implies that the strongest ally gets stunned, and I'm 99% sure that's not what you want to go for here. Instead, you want to have it be like the strongest ally strikes and stuns the enemy I challenge, or something similar to that effect. You can also do it as a support effect as well. You could have it as a support effect that goes on the stack even, which I know is not technically something that has happened yet, but it at least makes logical sense. There's a lot of angles for this where I kind of feel like it kind of needs to be a little bit better. I do like it conceptually though, and it makes so much sense thematically, of course, as well, right? Like when Blitzcrank and League, he grabs you, pulls you in, then his allies just beat the crap out of you, right? Like that makes a lot of sense, and I'm really glad that this card exists, but it's just the stun is just pushing it in a way that I just can't really agree with, especially on the level up. The fact that it's his condition, that's the part that's the biggest issue here. I could even argue that you could keep him as a stun effect, as a one-off stun effect in PZ, but you cannot make his level up that condition, because that makes him almost essentially impossible to level up. If you really want to make it like stun 2+ enemies, then it can get into the issues where a simple crossover into Noxus or Ionia makes him overpowered. So it's just like, you're in a rough spot when you make it bounced on the stun effect here. Overall though, I like the ideas behind this card a lot. It's just very confused because the card itself works so well in Noxus and so well as a Noxian card, but it just does not work functionally in PZ, and that's truly the downside of this card, because if this was in Noxus and it had obviously a different flavor and a different character, it would be a lot higher rating for me, because I think a lot of the basis around this card is great. Obviously, you have to fix up some of the wording as well, because that's obviously a bit more of an issue as well. But overall, it just works really well, and I'm really happy for a lot of the parts of this card. But because it's PZ and it sort of just feels like it's just kind of out there, it sucks because I love Blitzcrank, man. I love him. He's one of my favorite characters. I'm gonna have to give this one a C as well. I'm super sorry, but there's not much I can really do here. It's just completely out of its own region and kind of like ignores some of the precedents set by current effects in the game. Alright, I think that's basically it for me today. Thank you so much everyone for watching. If you guys have a custom card of your own that you want reviewed, please send it to my email. It'll be in the description below. You can also DM it to me on Discord as well, where a link to my Discord will be in the description there, so that works for me as well. If you can, please make a transparent PNG so it's super easy for me to apply it to my animations here. But if not, I'll do my best to make it work. Thank you so much again, guys. As always, you know I gotta do it. If you like the video, please like the video. If you want to comment, please comment. If you want to subscribe and see more videos like these, I do a custom review basically every week, and it'll be available next week. If you like any sort of Legends of Runeterra content, I'd really appreciate the subscribe. But otherwise, though, that's basically it for me. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching again. I'll see you guys around. Peace out.